Hi everyone. Hi. Welcome. Happy International Women's Day. Come on, International Women's Day. A lot of ladies in the house. Welcome. I want to welcome everyone who's come out tonight. Thank you for coming, and I want to welcome you first to one of the newest projects in the Artscape family, Artscape Daniels Launchpad. My name is Lisa. I'm the Director of Membership and Marketing here, and I wanted to thank the Factor team for bringing us all together here tonight. Much like Factor exists to help drive the growth and development of the Canadian music industry, Launchpad was designed to help make careers in the creative field more sustainable. Specifically, this place was built for creative entrepreneurs just like you. So at Launchpad, we offer co-working and collaboration space. We offer creative and technical studios with state-of-the-art equipment, from textiles and fashion to jewelry and fine metals, to digital fabrication and woodworking, photography, and of course, sound and audio recording. So we hope to see a lot of your faces here, bringing your projects to life sometime in the near future. We also offer learning programs, workshops, coaching, mentoring, as well as a vibrant community with which to build connections that can last. So really there's something here for every kind of artist and designer. From emerging talents to those who are more established in their creative practices. I'm not going to take much more time. I just wanted to say if you're curious about Launchpad memberships and our 30,000 square feet of space that we have here, including a wonderful co-working lounge, very eclectic space on the other end of the building, a beautiful terrace. We invite you to take a tour with us after the sessions here tonight. We'll be set up and ready for you right where you checked in at registration. Thanks everyone and have a great evening. Over to you.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Megan Jones. I'm the operations manager at Factor. We wanted to start the evening by acknowledging the land that we're meeting on. It's the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This land acknowledgement is an opportunity for settlers to reflect on the enduring presence, caretaking, and resilience of Indigenous peoples in this area for time immemorial, and to continually reaffirm a commitment to reconciliation. In more recent history, the land we're standing on was once a gathering place for people to experience music and expression. Government Nightclub was a place where people could discover artists for the first time and celebrate the many sounds, rhythms, and instruments of the many diasporas that have migrated to this territory over the past few decades. In keeping with this theme, this event is grounded in supporting access for all artists to fund their music careers. Across the country, Factor has worked with our regional partners to stage workshops, seminars, and events in celebration of International Women's Day. This ties into our mission to encourage the values of diversity and inclusiveness within the Canadian music sector. These events support our commitment to ensuring universal access to all funds and services, and including all musical expressions and talent. Once again, we want to thank Artscape Daniels Launchpad for allowing us to use this beautiful space. And we'd also like to thank SEMA and Music Ontario for partnering with us and being here tonight. Can we have the Music Ontario folks wave your hands? Yes. Thank you so much. So, Music Ontario provides professional development, education, information, and support for the Ontario music industry. They're definitely people to talk to and know, so really encourage you to say hi to them afterwards. And sitting up here with me today, we have Ruth-Ann Shallow and Chelsea Stewart. I'll just have you briefly introduce yourselves.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chelsea Stewart. I'm a singer-songwriter and I sing reggae and jazz, and I'm recently a JUNO-nominated.
Happy International Women's Day, everyone.
Yay!
My name is Ruth-Ann Shallow, and I'm one of the jurors for Factor. My background is 7 years at SOCAN, 11 years at Universal Music, and I'm the chair of special events for the Urban Music Association of Canada. So I have a number of years of experience in the business, and I enjoy what I do with Factor because it keeps me in tune to the phenomenal talent in our country.
Thank you so much for being with us here tonight. This is our agenda for the evening. I wanted to note that in the presentation, we'll be focusing on artist development and juried sound recording because they're our most popular programs for artists. But Factor has many other programs for artists, music companies, and collectives. And to learn more about those, again, would encourage you to talk to Factor staff at the end of the event. If any Factor staff in the room can wave your hands. They're more than happy to get to know you, hear about what you're doing, and can tell you more about other programs that we offer. We also want to invite you, if you have questions throughout the presentation, if you just raise your hand, a staff member will come by with a microphone so we can make sure that everyone hears your question, but we'll also have opportunity for questions at the end. Okay, so about Factor. Just to get a sense in the room here, who has heard of Factor? Who has applied for Factor? Who has received Factor funding? Excellent, great. So if you're not aware, Factor's we're an independent not-for-profit organization, and our funding comes from the Department of Canadian Heritage through the Canada Music Fund, as well as private radio broadcasters. And as Lisa mentioned earlier, we're dedicated to providing assistance to the growth and development of the Canadian music industry. It's important to know what Factor is not. So we're not a government department or an arts council. And I mention this because I think this is important when we start talking about our juried programs and our efforts to disseminate and support the promotion of music. Some other facts. We have a operating budget of 20 million, and over 18 million of that goes towards grants. As I mentioned, we support Canadian artists and music companies that are working on projects in any language other than French. If you're working in French language, you would go to our sister organization, Music Action. Our funding is project-based, and we support activities such as sound recording, marketing, touring and showcasing, radio marketing, and video content creation. And our main point of eligibility is Canadian citizenship, and that can be Canadian citizenship, Canadian permanent residency, or holders of secure certificate of Indian status cards. So I'll go over how to get started in the system. I just want to mention that on our website we have loads of resources that go into the details of how to get set up. But just point out the three main things that you need, which are a user profile, an artist profile, and an applicant profile. The user profile is quite simple. It's essentially your login to our online system. That's also where you would upload proof of that Canadian citizenship. The artist profile focuses on you as an artist and your career. So that's the place where you would list the members of your artist group, limit a bio and genre. Pretty simple. And then finally, the applicant profile is more on the business side. So for most people signing up in our system, if you, for most people, your main business activity will be as an artist, and that's kind of it. The thing to note here is when we talk about the business side, this is the party that's going to enter into an agreement with Factor, and I think the simplest way to explain it is if you get approved and you get paid, what's the bank account that the money is going to go into? And on that note of money in bank account, and it's coming up on April, it's important to note that Factor funding is taxable, or that you'll receive a T4A for funding, so that's something to keep in mind. Chelsea, do you have any comments or tips on this part of the process?
Well, this part seemed pretty easy. It's pretty basic. You guys will be fine.
It's okay, I'll speak loud. So I have a question about the,
Okay, I'll speak so in regards to, there's so many different stories about the T4s, both from accountants and also from all of the different funding bodies, Factor, the arts councils and everyone. But the thing that I'm unclear on is if it's taxable, if the Factor money is taxable, but all of the Factor money is attached to expenses of a project. So those expenses, you know what I mean? So like if it's not money going into my bank account for me to exist, it's money to fund particular activities, printing of this, the recording of that, the paying of studio time. So how is that then taxable beyond the taxes paid for that, which isn't part of the Factor, isn't included in the Factor funding?
So I should preface this by saying I'm not an accountant. But basically that when you get, so for example, for artist development, you would receive $2,000 of funding, and so that gets claimed as income. I think.
I see, so then in that case, then I would rectify that with my accountant in that the expenses were paid, whatever, $1,000 per song to work with X producer, and then we deal with that, so that's how it gets balanced out.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And these mics are feeding back, whoever's doing sound, maybe could take them down.
Oh, yeah, we have another question.
How does that work for a band then, because there's like multiple people?
Yeah, so if you're in a band, if the band is not incorporated or if there's not a partnership, usually people just pick one member of the group. So you would sign up as an individual or sole proprietor and provide your social insurance number. So the T4 would be issued to that one person in the group.
So I used to be a solo artist, and then I kind of like morphed into a band. Would you recommend that I change my artist and/or applicant and/or user profile, or just start again?
Yeah, so for our artist profiles, they should be specific to the artist or act. I think a way to think of it would be, for your sound recordings, if it's Megan Jones, or if it's Megan Jones and juror. If it's different repertoire and different kind of branding and identity, you can create a separate artist profile for that. For the applicant profile, if it's still, if you're still using, even though it's a different artist project, if you're still using the same bank account, we haven't kind registered separately, then you're fine to use the same applicant profile. And for everyone, we encourage you to please only have one user profile, just one login to the system.
And if it's just like a name change, like if the repertoire is the same, but it's just like, we're just rebranding, same artist profile?
Yeah, so if it's the same artist, so if it's basically the same artist, but you're rebranding, you can, like, you're performing the same songs, but you're just performing under a different name, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's fine to update the name. You would just contact your project coordinator. So, just to mention project coordinators, when you sign up in the Factor system and create your artist profile and applicant profile, you get assigned to a project coordinator. We have 9 project coordinators who are your main point of contact with Factor. So at any point during the application process, if you have questions, they're your go-to person and can help you throughout the whole granting process. Just to briefly touch on our artist rating system, we have different ratings for artists to determine the programs that you're eligible for. We've aimed to design our programs to have programs for artists at every stage of their career. I'll mention that the majority of artists, probably over 95% of the artists in their system are rated general. And with that general rating, you're able to apply to artist development, during sound recording, showcase funding, and other programs as well. There are opportunities to increase your artist rating. We just had our deadline for our annual review at the end of February, and then we also have a semi-annual review at the end of August. Okay, so we'll get into talking about the specific programs now. Maybe actually, Chelsea, we can ask if you're an artist and say you're an artist, coming to Factor for the first time, how would you go about kind of deciding what to apply for, or maybe what's been your journey with Factor?
I should start by saying that I've received 5 grants from Factor. I applied for the first time, I think in 2014. And the first one was a demo grant. And then I received 3 showcase grants. And I also received a jury sound recording just last year. So I would definitely say to start out with a demo grant. Just if you have yet to record anything or just starting out. Sorry, what was the question again? What was the question again? That last.
Yeah, I think that yeah. Just about how you decide what to apply for, and so you're saying.
Yeah, just figure out what you want to do. So if you're going to be traveling, you obviously use a showcase grant. If you have an album to record, you would go to the jury sound recording. And if you want to develop yourself, you go to artist development. So it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. So Chelsea mentioned our demo program. So the artist development program is it used to be called the demo program. It was a 15.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. It used to be a $1,500 grant, and you could only use it for sound recording. And then a few years ago, we redesigned it into the artist development program. We increased the grant to $2,000 and opened up the eligibility of activities. So it's designed to be really flexible. So if you're approved, it can go towards 1 year of artist development activities, and that can still be sound recording, touring, video, marketing, things like that. A big thing to remember with artist development is it is a $2,000 grant, but we fund 75% of the project activities. So in order to get the full 2,000, you need to spend the 2,667. That's a really, really important thing to remember. As part of the application, you will fill out an artist development plan and also provide one assessment track for the jury to listen to. Any other question?
Yeah, does that artist development program include lessons and coaching?
So the question was, does the artist development program include lessons and coaching? No, it does not.
For the assessment track, is it a track that, like, say you receive the jury exam recording and now you're doing the artist development program? Are you allowed to take a song that you used during the jury exam recording to apply for the assessment track?
Right, so the assessment track cannot be commercially released. So at the time that you submit the application. So my guess is likely not, but yeah, that's one of the main criteria for the assessment track is that it can't have already been commercially released.
On the assessment track as well, I guess what is the baseline quality level? Because obviously there's like work tape level, and there's a full-fledged demo, and different people will have kind of different levels of recordings on hand. So what's kind of, I guess, the baseline that is expected?
Would you like to?
That's a good question.
Chelsea as well?
That's a good question. I can definitely say that the first time I applied for my jury sound recording, because I applied twice, guys. Apply more than once. If the first you don't succeed, try again, okay? But the first time I applied for the jury sound recording, they said it can be like beginner level, like just so people can get a general understanding of the recording. And so I put a certain level in, and I feel like that is one of the reasons why I didn't get through the first time around. The second time around, I tried to up the quality, and I got through, so,
Thank you.
yeah.
The quality is important, but it's not the most important thing. Usually within your application, you speak to what changes you plan to make to your track, and we look at that and get a good sense of direction of where you're going with that song, and based on that, we score accordingly. So, I mean, if you don't have the financing to go to, the top quality studio to, produce a quality track, then it's understood, and you won't be penalized for that.
So you won't be penalized?
No.
Okay. I just want to say, when you don't get through, always ask if anybody had any notes. And when I looked at my notes, I saw that people said that the recording needed some work, or needed some this, needed some that, even though I did mention that I plan on adding this and that. So just be careful, artists, be careful on that. I've been a juror as well, so I understand what it's like. You have a question?
Yeah, so on that note, a bad recording won't hurt us, but if we have a great recording already, is that helping our case for getting lots of money?
I'm just saying, just saying to do your best. Do the best you can. Yeah.
A good recording is great.
I don't mean you to spend a whole bunch of money.
Right.
But that is a common question we get is if my assessment track sounds too good, will they think, oh, well, they don't need the money? And that's,
Yeah, that's not the case.
Yeah, I think you always want to put your best foot forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, and I don't know if this is entirely right, but if you work with writers and like producers, you can use the track obviously as a demo, and you're not paying any money because you're not releasing the song. So you can have like a really high quality track and you're not releasing it, but it's like for the purpose of your grant. So I think that's kind of like a life hack that it's sick, so.
we'll definitely talk more about the parts of the application and the accessibility and all that. So the next step up is our juried sound recording program. So as Chelsea mentioned, this is a great program if you're committed to creating a full length sound recording, or if you've released some music already, you know, and have a good experience. So for this program, the goal is to fund a full length sound recording, as well as we provide the marketing and promotion support for that. So you'll see that the offer amount goes up to $47,000. So kind of a big leap there. And for the application, the big differences here is that you submit 2 assessment tracks and then include a marketing plan as well, right? Because if actors were to invest in the sound recording and the promotion, we want to make sure that that you have the ability to execute that plan.
Can I say something about that?
Yes.
I remember when I was applying for the jury sound recording and I saw that I had to create a detailed marketing plan, I was like, uh-oh. But then you do your research and you look on the Factor website, there are a lot of resources available to you. They kind of break things down and tell you what exactly everything means. So it's not as difficult as it sounds. You can definitely do it.
So it says 47.5K, and I want to know, what does it take to actually get around 40K funding?
So the way the funding is broken up is some is flexible and some is specific. So you can have up to 10,000 for the sound recording. Then the next 15K is flexible. So that could be marketing, video, tour, and then we get into the specific funding. So 5,000 of that is for radio and marketing, and then you can get another 15,000 for international touring, and then another 2,500 for international showcasing. And that's phase 1.
Hi again. Okay, so I've received this grant before, and yeah, it's great. I've applied many times, more than 2, far more than 2. Exactly, and I found that as an artist who's releasing music independently, I found that the 25% that I was required to come up with on my own is quite a large amount. And I'm like, in the end, I applied to the Arts Councils because the music that I'm making qualifies under their programs as well, but not everyone applying to Factor, like especially really poppy pop music, wouldn't necessarily be eligible in those programs. What was the rationale? I don't quite understand that rationale, because I find when you get into these higher numbers, the cost of producing a full-length album and the accompanying marketing, touring, everything else associated, you're getting up into the tens of thousands. That's very hard for an independent artist to come up with an additional, supplementary $7,500 on a on a $30,000 project. So what is it? Can you explain to me the rationale? I want to understand this.
Yeah, so the rationale is that we want to see that artists are making an investment in the project.
Investing in themselves.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think it's so even though there's 47,500 available, if that's not within your means, then it's probably not wise to do that. Like you said, you can use other public funding to support your project. The only rule being that our funding plus any other public funding can't be more than 100% of your expenses, so that you're not making money off of the grant system. But yeah, I would say it is about the investment in the project of your career and to scale it to what you're able to contribute.
I've also had people tell me, very frankly, to not apply for the jury sound recording if you haven't received the artist development grant. Is that true, or is that just mythology?
I would say that it all kind of depends. There's certainly cases of people who, you know, their first time or second time, they just applied to jury exam recording and they get it, they receive it. So it's not a rule or a kind of a.
It's not carved in stone. It's not.
Yes, it's not carved in stone. I think, you know, I've heard artists, you know, kind of speak that kind of starting out with the artist development, you know, kind of provides that kind of stepping stone up and to graduate up to jury exam.
I would probably recommend that you do artist development first, because it would then allow you to create good quality music to then apply for the jury sound recording, right? And as for what you were saying about us being starving artists, it's true, it is difficult. 25% can get really crazy. I would recommend to all artists that as an artist you should have some type of recording, because you as an artist are a product. So get yourself on a CD and sell those CDs. That's what I do as a 9 to 5. My mom and I have sold quite a few CDs since 2014, and that's how I've been using my 9 to 5, like legit. I go to Caribbean restaurants and I say, hi, my name is Chelsea Stewart. I have a CD available for $10. Would you like to get one? And they say either yes or no, and it helps you get over that fear of maybe speaking to people or fear of rejection. But definitely it helps in terms of funding yourself and investing in yourself. So if you have a product, don't be afraid to sell it, because that is your income.
Yes.
There has been a lot of stress on applying multiple times, and I don't really know how to navigate that now with the new framework that prohibits you from applying more than once every 365 days. And I personally think that inhibits, especially the artist development program, considering multiple people have talked about having to apply more than once. So like, am I supposed to wait 5 years to develop as an artist? Like, I don't understand Factor's rationale behind implementing that new framework for all programs across the board. So I was wondering if somebody could speak to that, as to, especially that is aware of like why that decision came in place, because I don't really understand how that like fosters any new artists that don't have the infrastructure, that aren't getting direct board approval from Factor, like giving money to a major label or someone with the infrastructure.
Yeah, so the change that was mentioned, so Factor has, for these jury programs, we've got these 2 deadlines, and a recent change that we made was that you can only apply once per 12 months, or basically every other deadline. The rationale behind that is, in this past year, we received 4,000 applications to these programs. And so Ruth and Chelsea are our jurors. Our jurors are all volunteers from across Canada. And for each application, we get at least 7 assessments. So the volume of that, and trying to both keep up with that demand, and also make sure that everyone is getting those 7 assessments, and our jurors are able to spend the time and to fairly look at that. It's a matter of volume, and with this change, we're encouraging people to be strategic about their applications, and So I think it's a matter of planning in advance. It's, for example, meeting with people at Music Ontario who can help strengthen your application. Additionally, with this, for the artist development program in particular, well, for both jury programs, we've added another $1 million so that we can fund more artists. But I think the main reason is that volume. It's trying to be respectful of our jurors' time and making sure that we have good adjudication.
Can I say something on that? Sure. Megan, that sounds to me like you guys need some more volunteers. So instead of, yeah, guys, become a volunteer. When I became a juror, it helped me to see what a good application looks like and what a bad application looks like. So definitely become a juror, volunteer, and help factor out.
I guess my follow-up is like, why not have those limitations for all that haven't received funding and let you apply for each deadline for your first ever artist development grant and then have the restrictions after you've received it? Because once you've received it, you should know better. But some of the comments about planning in advance, it's like, yes, of course you should be planning in advance with your factor grant. I don't think that that's completely over people's heads, nor that these new guidelines even encourage that anyway. But I know that it definitely sucks as like a disabled artist now being like, wow, if it's gonna take people speaking here today multiple times to apply to get funding, I guess it's gonna take me years instead of just multiple times throughout the year. So I don't know who to comment to about it, but perhaps for the first ever time you're applying for AD, you haven't received funding from Factor, I don't see that there's like harm in being able to apply for all deadlines until you've already become a Factor recipient. But I'm not the radio broadcasters, I'm not your funders, so I don't really get to decide those things.
Yeah, so I appreciate you. Appreciate you speaking about that, and yeah, we do know it's challenging, and I think if you definitely invite you and anyone to, if you have feedback about that, please reach out to us and talk to us tonight.
Factor has a lot of grants out there. There's a lot of grants and there's a lot of other granting societies so that all have different deadlines. So don't just, I mean, I don't know if I should say that, but there are a lot of opportunities for us. So
These are just two.
yeah, exactly.
Hi. I wanted to ask kindly, if we are successful at getting, let's say, the May 31st deadline, 12 weeks after the fact, can we still apply the next deadline and actually hope to receive funding for the same program?
So once you can't apply for another grant until you close out the current one. Yeah, and so it's and so I think typically with the timing of that, you would still probably be looking at applying the following year.
So I'm assuming everybody here is an artist, yes? Yes, and so when you get when you're creating, where does that can we all agree that it comes from the great divine?
Yes.
Okay? Can we all agree on that? It doesn't come from our own knowing, right? So I just want to say that I know that when it comes to applying for grants, it's like a left brain, right brain situation. And sometimes you have to just understand that this is what you want to do. Go back to that same source that helps you to create your art, to help you to properly express yourself in this application so that the person who's looking at your application can understand that. The anxiety that comes as, to do all this writing stuff is a tough game, but you have to remember that as creatives, that's what you do. you make things happen with your creative power. I just also want to say, as far as funding is concerned, it's really very important to just try to get your art in a package. However you do it, however rough it may start, your packaging, start it. And then from there, that will ease the funding that you get from that, or the sales that you get from that when you approach people with your art, makes it a little bit easier to wait on Factor and their deadlines and other funding organizations' deadlines is really what I wanted to say. I'm not sure if that helps, but helped us.
I got one. So, to the jurors, this is a juror type of question. So whether you do an artist development or a JSR, this is particularly in regards to reapplying after you've just applied and maybe not been successful in the first one. So you get this feedback, you get your score, you get your feedback, and sometimes the feedback's phenomenal, it's really detailed and helpful. Sometimes it's not. But what I'm curious about is there any value, or like how much value, or how much do you guys look at if someone applied for this before and is applying again, and they were given feedback and they actually took that feedback? Is that apparent anywhere in the system, or is it kind of just a blank slate every time? You understand what I'm asking?
I wouldn't know.
It's a blank.
It's a blank slate. So, in other words, take the feedback, because, it's given with love and willfully and so on, but there's no actual connection between whether you take the advice or not.
Exactly. So when you're applying, jurors don't have access to anything other than what you put in that application. So so they don't see any previous applications, any previous juror comments, things like that.
And if I can just,
It's your second time applying at all.
they don't?
Unless you receive it twice, but I've never received the same person.
Oh, really? Interesting. And the one small piece of advice I would give to anyone that's, reapplying or whatever is, if you, I've lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was going to say. Next question.
Come back to it.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah.
Okay. Could you speak to like how Factor is addressing accessibility? I feel like some people have mentioned, if you're disabled, it's kind of harder to find and keep jobs, so come up with the 75%, or it could be learning disabilities about reading and understanding the application and other things like that.
Yeah. So so we welcome applications from all people with disabilities. If there's at any stage of the application process, so before I mentioned our project coordinators, any sort of questions or like you said, like if it's like I'm reading this point in your business policies and I don't understand it at all, can you explain it to me? They're there to help with that. We also have an accessibility application support fund, so that if you require a service provider in order to even fill out our applications, things like that, we offer funding to cover that expense. And certainly if there's any other accommodations that people need in order to apply, we want to meet those. So definitely encourage anyone that needs accessibility support to let us know.
On that, I would definitely say that your project coordinator is there to help you. So anything that seems weird, anything that you don't understand, send them an email, call them. That's my project coordinator over there, Jim. I love him. He's the best. Justin. Yeah. He's the best. Anywho, the point is, ask questions, because that's what they're there for. They're there to help you. I bother him all the time, and he's very nice about it. and he answers all the questions. So if you ever have any,
I can vouch for that too.
there you go, there you go.
Yeah, I think that's something I've heard before, people talk about, oh, I don't wanna bother them or this and that. It's literally their job to answer your questions and, you know, something, you know, like to think of considering your project coordinator a member of your team, right? They can, so if you have those questions of, you know, am I ready for JSR or, you know, should I be applying to artist development or, explaining rules or can I do this or that? Please don't hesitate to talk to them. You can email, call. Our office is also located at Dundas and Spadina. And you're welcome to come in and visit and say hi as well.
Hi. How common or uncommon is it to receive notes, like feedback notes? Just because of I've applied twice to JSTAR. I received an AD grant and was using that to apply for JSTAR. And I know it takes many tries sometimes. The very first time I applied to JSTAR, I got some really valuable feedback that I was able to use to reapply, and the second time I got absolutely no feedback at all. Is that a common thing? And as someone that is truly independent, like I am not signed to a label, and I do know that some labels get automatic funding for their artists that they represent. Like how common is that to like not, it's very discouraging to not receive any feedback at all and score close to the acceptance score.
Yeah, absolutely understand how frustrating that is. Also hear sometimes people say, I got one comment and it was, great job. Right. We don't require our jurors to give feedback, but we do strongly, or always saying, because we know how valuable it is for artists to get that information. I'm trying to think of the last deadline. There were maybe 5 projects that received 0 comments at all. So it's thankfully it's not super common. Very sorry that happened to you. I think in that situation, I keep mentioning Music Ontario. So part of what they do for artists is to help with applications. But I would correct me if I'm wrong. But if it's one that they've already submitted and they said, hey, I didn't get any feedback, is that something that you could take a look and kind of give some of that feedback on? Emmy, I'm sorry, I think people are having trouble with it, so we're just gonna get away from you. Thank you.
So we can provide kind of more general industry support feedback. I don't think we would assess an application. I think that would be kind of a turn for us, but we're definitely happy to go over just the overall process and the decision-making process of why did you choose, let's say, JSR instead of artist development. Do you need that full album, or can you make a lot of leeway or a lot of progress in your career with, let's say, just a demo or some marketing support, that kind of thing. So we're definitely there to be kind of a sounding wall. We can speak with people, provide some support, but I'm not sure we dissect someone's application for them. But if they wanted to share that with us, then we could easily be like, okay, here's where you could improve, here's where maybe some flags went up, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we have, so Chelsea was mentioning in our resources, we have a marketing plan guide. We also have a jury assessment preparation guide. And I think barring other people, I think even just looking at that and asking those questions of yourself, saying, was I specific? Did I include information about this or that? Hopefully that can help with some self-assessment as well. But again, yeah, I think it's hopefully rare that you receive no comments.
And I think it's uncommon. I always provide feedback when I do assessment. Like I'll provide feedback on the tracks, what I thought about the sound, the production, the hook. Like, I'll provide feedback on music, and then I'll also provide feedback on your actual plan, your goals. If I think it's realistic, if I think it's achievable. So I always like to provide feedback because I know it's important. It's helpful. Yeah, exactly.
I don't always, so I'm gonna remember you next time around as a juror.
Hi y'all, my name is Andres, and I'm a pop artist from Toronto. And my question is, my question is, what do you think about like hiring grant writers to, write your grant? There's always like the grant writer who, touts that they have a higher success rate, or what makes a good grant application that would justify having someone who, makes money off of that or whatever to be able to create these grants that are supposed to increase your chances of funding.
Chelsea, do you want to speak to that? Or
Well,
from your experience?
I've hired a grant writer for something outside of the factor before, and it didn't go through. It wasn't accepted, and I was like, oh, why the heck am I paying somebody to, when I can just do this myself? So I would just say that you just have to look through the guidelines. They give you tips, and like I said before, call your project coordinators and just give them as much detail as you can. Like, you can never have too much detail, unless it might be I think in the artist development you have a set amount.
Sometimes
Right.
there's too much.
Yeah, exactly. but the marketing plan, mine was like 22 pages, and I was pretty proud of that. So you gotta do your research and just give them as much information as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with grant writers, specifically with the jury programs, they cannot guarantee, yes, I'm gonna get you through, right? Because it's up to 7 to 12 jurors assessing that. I think.
And I'm not sure if they care as much as you would, Like, you know yourself, you know how good you are, like your fan base better than anybody else, so just do what you can. And maybe get a friend to look it over, a couple of friends.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. I think that like Chelsea was saying, grant writers don't have a magic key, right? I think some benefits that they may have is if it is their business, then if they're a good grant writer, they should know the guidelines and policies. That said, that information and or people like a project coordinator who do know that information, that is available for you, and you don't have to pay for that. And yeah, I love the tip of if getting a friend to read it, because I think it's useful to know like how you're coming across. Are you ask them like what's popping out for you, or when you read this, do you have any questions afterwards? So
Yeah, an outsider's perspective. Sometimes you've looked at it so many times. But you looked over it so many times and you start to miss things. So definitely get somebody to look at it.
Of all the application that you get, right, is the application looked at by the same number of jurors? Like in a criminal court, right, there's 12 jurors, right? But like in your, like, is the number of juries on the same? And also, how often is the jury trained? So if somebody is rejected by a certain jury, would they have a better chance of getting granted a new jury counsel?
Yeah, so we have close to 2,000 jurors at each round looking at applications. In any one specific application, we'll have at least 7 people assessing it. If we have the availability, we can try to get as many as we can, but at minimum, there will be 7. Yeah, and
You
then.
said you not, like you said,
Yeah, so each, so the question was, is it a consensus or kind of getting the unanimous vote? Each juror provides a numeric score for, in artist development, it's 4 categories, and in jury design recording, it's 5. So they provide a score for each category, and then the juror scores are averaged to get a final score. And then we look at all of the applications in that program for that round, and based on our budget, the top scoring applications get an offer of funding. So that's my question.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Butterfly. Hi, everybody. Good session tonight. I have a question on behalf of my team here. So you recorded the song, it's really doing well. You put forth a video, you have a really good following, let's say 5,000, 10,000. And you're saying, Factor, I really need support. I want to get more of a following. I want to increase. Does Factor help with the marketing?
Yes. So again, for the application, the assessment track, it can't be commercially released. But yes, so with artist development and in jury sound recording, we have marketing, which can cover social media, publicists, videos as well. Yeah, so that's absolutely part of what we fund and what we're trying to do.
Hi, good evening. I'm Chandandeep Sharma, CEO of Diamond Music Group. I got here from India in fall 2018, and I worked with multi-platinum certified artist Alan Walker, featured in an 800 million view video. I have access to Snapchat, Google, connected with Twitter, and mentored by industry leaders like Misal Benford, who is 10 times certified platinum. I think that despite having all of these assets, after doing so much hard work, me being a student just comes in the way. And I'm not a PR, I'm not a citizen, so I cannot even apply. So is there anything that's coming up where I can apply? Because I like to believe that I can do justice to any of the aspects, be it musicality, singing, marketing, publishing, anything, be it anything.
Yeah, unfortunately, the eligibility is limited to Canadian citizens, permanent residents, because our funding comes from government of Canada, it's to support Canadian citizens. So unfortunately, I don't anticipate that changing. Okay. Let's see where we're at here. So I think we've talked a bit about, we've touched on this a bit. Yeah, so as Chelsea mentioned, we are always looking for more jurors, and jurors can be artists, publicists, managers, radio personalities, that kind of thing.
I wanted to say that as a juror and as an artist, make your, in terms of the marketing plan, that's what I can speak on, because I haven't technically applied for the artist development grant, but the demo grant, and I applied for that 3 times before I got it. So just want to say that. But for the marketing plan, make it look interesting, personalize it, because I remember them saying that on the Factor website that you should personalize it. So I sing reggae music, so I want to make certain things red, green, gold, and you see this picture, it looks fabulous. Put some fabulous pictures in there, because you're selling yourself. And me as a juror, it makes it more interesting for me. Like, ooh, look at that burgundy, Even in the fonts, like just switching up the fonts, because we have a lot of things to look at, and so just try to remember that, make it look visually appealing.
Ruth, can you speak to things that stand out in a marketing plan or application?
Yeah, the exact same thing, like visuals are important. I like to see pictures. There are some times where I receive an application and I have no idea what the artist looks like. So it's important to include some visuals, and just touch on different aspects of what should be in a marketing plan, like define your target audience. Talk about what you plan to do, your goals. There's just a lot of different areas that sometimes people kind of leave out that should be included in the marketing plan. Your promotion, your publicity, any press that you might have, that's important to include. Plans for radio, social media is big, so you want to include what you're doing with your social media platforms and distribution. And another big one that I like to see is support. Like, are you getting letters of support? Are you going out in the community and networking and connecting with people and, trying to get support from other industry people or your peers? That shows that you're serious about your career and, you're going out and really trying. Like she's saying, she goes out to restaurants and she puts her product out there. That's important to get that support.
That's a good point, the letters of support. That is, I personally think that's key because it just shows the juror that, other people are vouching for you. So definitely look into that.
Does FACT do anything to help artists pay rent?
No, so our funding doesn't cover living expenses.
There are other grants that do.
I remembered my tip, thanks to what Ruth was just saying. Because I've seen multiple, artist applications, and it's about the genre in which they specialize. Okay, especially in these days when it can be very hard sometimes to pin down a genre. Forget about what you think your genre is. Think about what the juror, when you're doing that category on the factor site that says, what kind of music do you do? Sometimes you'll find artists will think, oh, I'm this, but actually, the juror pool that's going to go into is not the juror pool that's going to give them necessarily the best eyes on it. So, when you're, especially with factor particular, think of the juror pool that it's going into. I don't know if the jurors would agree with me on that, but I think it's important.
Yeah, so what you're speaking to is on the application, you select the genre of the project that you're applying for, and the way that we select those 7 or more jurors to assess your application is based on genre. Like you said, we understand there's lots of crossover, and our list of genres is fairly broad. But yes, I think that's an excellent tip, is to think about who best would understand and receive your application. Absolutely.
So my question is, I don't know if anyone else has wondered this, but the genre that I do is, I kind of coined it up myself. It's called punk trap. So it's like a mixture of punk rap with on a trap beat. It's also dark and emotional, but I pretty much just kind of condensed it to just punk trap. But now that he brings up, forget about what you think you do and just think about what somebody else is gonna see out of your music. But then it's that's kind of really discouraging to hear. So what kind of advice would you give to someone like me who's trying to create a different brand for themselves and try to work with that, and just go against the grain?
Against the artist?
Yeah. No, I'd say to stick with his advice. Don't think of it as discouraging. If you have, you call it punk trap?
Punk trap.
Punk trap, yeah. If you have punk trap, then that's what you got. But if it's not on the category, if it's not on the list, then you have to find something to put it into, girl. You gotta, just put it in the box for a little bit, only temporary, just for the application. But when you're on stage, you tell them it's contract, right? Yeah.
It's called,
Well,
it's
no,
called,
no,
it's called rebranding.
And
It's called
eventually
rebranding.
it might be on the list, you know?
We'll hear where you're going with it, put it under the broad categories, maybe urban music or, you know, something like that, R&B, hip hop, whatever the case is. Put it under that category and then sure listens to it, assesses it. We'll see and hear in your bio, you're gonna define who you are, right? So we'll know the genre that you wanna call it.
And I think that's what artists want, is the opportunity to create their own bio.
Self-expression, it's true. So feel free to say that elsewhere.
So in your,
Put that in there.
you'll want to define that in your bio and in your marketing, you know, you'll identify
People
who you
will
are.
get it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's the key is that, the thing I always say about applying for these programs is, you can confirm, but, you want to tell the jurors, basically want to demonstrate that you know who your audience is, you know how to reach them, and that you have a realistic and specific plan to achieve that. So, so it might be adding a bit more explanation of, yeah, I do punk trap, and this is where I'm gonna go to get the people who are gonna enjoy this and spread the word about this genre that I've created, right? So I do think the kind of key about that is about the marketing and the understanding of the audience and giving that context for what it is you do and seeing it as a positive that you're doing something that you're offering something and doing something that many other people are.
Unique and original.
That's right.
Love it.
Hi, thank you, it's really helpful. I wonder if you could talk for a minute about how flexible the jury time recording budget is in terms of, I'm sure there are some of us here who produce our own work, which means it actually doesn't cost me anything to make the work, except for my food and rent. So I'm just wondering, and I'm also looking at the marketing promotion for non-factor funded projects, which for me would be the first one that I would go to. The issue is that it has to have achieved qualifying threshold, which I notice is also capitalized. So I assume that that means it's something that would maybe not be, I just wonder if that one is actually realistic for individual artists, or if you could speak a little bit about where someone with actually very low production costs, but more interested in the marketing side of things, might apply most successfully.
Yeah, so with the jury sound recording program, you can spend up to 10,000 on sound recording, but you don't have to do that. You do have to incur some expense in that, and that could even just be artwork, something like that. So with that flexible funding in the first phase, it's 25,000. So say you only want to spend 2,000 on sound recording, then that would leave 23,000 for marketing, or touring, video, all of that. And I'd be happy to talk to you, or another staff member can talk to you afterwards about the marketing program and about how the qualifying thresholds work.
I wanted to ask you guys as jurors, I don't know if you have access to, I don't know if this is working also, I don't know if you have access to other jurors, like, or like you guys like kind of talk. I guess it's not other jurors.
No, this is the first time I'm in the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Just in general, when you guys are reading the marketing plans, like, I know that some writers are like very narrative, like they write narratives, and some writers are very like straight to the point. And I just wanted to ask, like, for you guys personally, what do you like to see? Because I've seen like 19-page marketing plans that are very like, oh, I'm just like, I don't even want to read them myself. And then, whereas like I'm the kind of writer that's like super matter of fact, and I don't know if that.
I would say to the point is best, because, you know, we're there to figure out what the objective is for you as an artist. So, yeah, it's a point. What do you say, Ruth?
I like to the point, but I also like detail. I like to make sure that the content makes sense, that your plans and goals are realistic. And I want to see what your strategy is, how you plan to meet those goals. So sometimes it requires a little bit of detail, but to the point.
So I think we're, take another question and then we start wrapping it up a bit. We'll have time for questions, but again, any questions, please talk to me.
So just quickly, on the categories, so there are about 4 or 5 depending on which you're applying for. So if you're kind of honing in on, say, marketing, for example, obviously you're gonna have a plan to do X, Y, Z, but your dollars are going to this specific thing. I guess, how detailed would you want the other pieces to be? Would you wanna know that, like, here's my plan, but no dollars are going to it? Or would you only wanna know, like, this is where it's, what's happening, and like everything else is like NA?
I would say in artist development, definitely, even if you're not using the funding for certain activities, but you're planning on doing that over the next year, absolutely think to include that, to kind of give that context of what you're doing there and what you're working with.
Oh, I have so should I just ask one last question?
Yeah.
Thank you, I love your start, by the way. I appreciate this is a difficult question. I feel like there's also a lot of mythology about the idea that like Factor has favorites, or that in Factor it's like who you know, but all you guys are speaking to is the quality of the grant and the inspired nature of the art, and I'm wondering if there's truth to that mythology, if there's anything Factor wants to dispel about that idea that like you get grants based on who you know.
So our juries are anonymous. So an artist applying would be able to influence those jurors. And I think one of the best things that you can do for that is to become a juror or get people in your musical community to participate in juries, because that then gives you the power to say, within our community, like, this is good music, and this is something that should be funded. So I'd say certainly with the jury programs, it's not about who you know. We didn't talk about it tonight, but our showcase funding under our live performance program, it's purely eligibility based. So if you check off all the boxes, it's very likely that you're going to get funding. Does that answer?
I've never even heard that before, about Factor, As far as I know, it's pretty random, but definitely, that was great advice, Megan, about encouraging people in your genre.
No, I appreciate that. It's really valid. Thank you.
Everybody here should become a juror. Everybody.
Sorry.
I was applying, and I got really depressed, and you guys asked me for my name once, and I pushed out on the application. And it's like, then you go to the actual, right, our application right now. Continuously ask you guys questions, and
I can't fully hear you, but I feel like you're saying, can I ask questions?
can artists come into the Factor office and get some one-on-one support from us?
Well, you'd rather, as opposed to calling or emailing?
So that's a bit out of, we can certainly, answer questions,
You said there's accessibility support. Project coordinators could be good support.
Yeah, and, yeah, so we have, so for the application, for the accessibility application fund, that's typically a third-party provider. But if that's an accommodation that you need, that's something that we can support.
You saying you wanna come in and speak to somebody?
I want to come in and show and write my application right there. What's so
Okay,
I want to just chill there and write it right there in front of the person and like
so you can ask questions as you go.
as I go, you know?
I would just say that the limits to that is the factor staff, we're not the ones who are assessing it.
That's true.
Right?
Then I can blame it on you guys. I understand.
If I can answer that, I think I totally get what you're saying. It's Sharmy, right? Hi, she makes really dope music.
Yeah, I feel like depression and anxiety is like something that lots of people go through, especially in the arts process. And something that I did is I wrote my grant with my friend. So, and he like worked with a totally different genre, but I just like sat and wrote it with him and like got feedback from him. And that was really helpful. So I think it's about the artist community, like helping each other out and acknowledging too that like sometimes people get depressed and that's fine. You're gonna be okay. And but just for me personally, that was really, really helpful. Just like asking my friends to like sit with me while I did it. So that's what I did.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a great tip. I was gonna say on our website, we have a section of industry resources, including mental health resources. So there's organizations such as Unison that provide counseling and support for artists that you can access for free. So that could be something helpful as well. But I really love that suggestion of having a
Yeah, writing the application is depressing.
It's stressful, yeah.
So I think so we're rounding up.
About that, just like you said, it's very, you said depressing, I say stressful.
Yeah, same thing, yeah.
But so give yourself enough time. Give yourself enough time. Don't rush when you're doing your application. Don't wait till the deadline. Don't wait till a week before the deadline. Give yourself enough time and you'll be able to do it.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
And I've been in both situations where I'm like, oh yes, wait, deadline's coming up, okay. But give yourself enough time and you can pace yourself.
Yeah, that'll help you put your best foot forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to end with just kind of general tips, both for applying to factor and any other funder. And I know you dropped a lot of great wisdom tonight, but if there's any other tips you would kind of apply or do's or don'ts, or I think you mentioned a lot, but if there's anything that you've been dying to share or haven't said yet.
It's pretty much it. Anything?
Just keep on applying, don't be discouraged. I hear a lot of great submissions. There's a lot of phenomenal talent in Canada. Every time I do an assessment, I'm like in awe with the talent.
So true, I end up following people on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, I like your music, I'm a fan.
So, just keep on applying and, just consider it's not just the music, it's the full package. Your marketing plan, your bio, the supporting material that goes with it. You wanna do music that's really gonna connect with people, something that's gonna move them, right? So just think about, different areas of your both with the music and with your written plan.
I just want to say thank you to Factor for having me. It's been a pleasure. And if you guys are on Instagram, please follow me at C Stewart Sings. Got a shameless plug. And my music is on Apple Music, Spotify, and Tidal. Chelsea Stewart. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. And definitely want to thank Chelsea and Ruth for coming up here and give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. just want to remind you that Factor staff and Music Ontario staff are around. Please come talk to us, say hello. And I believe like Lisa said, there's tours of this wonderful space. I believe Karina is at 8:15 and 8:30. Or the 8:15, yes. So there's a tour at 8:15 and 8:30. Yes, and the love is yes. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
I mean,